Rusky Ed here, and the topic is verbs. As the intro song plays, inspect the focus words.
Rusky Ed is his name, and speaking Russian is his game. If it is Russian you would like to know, then Rusky Ed is the place to go.
Verbs in Russian are much more complicated than verbs in English. There are seemingly countless forms to keep track of. It gets to be a little mind-boggling after a while, and so the challenge is to become aware of all the different forms that verbs can take and how they get used. Russian verbs in their past tense forms are probably the easiest to understand and deal with. Take забыть, which means to forget, for instance. Its past tense forms include забыл, забыла, забыла, and забыли. That's just 4 forms with 3 singular forms and 1 plural form. That is, забыл is the male singular form, забыла is the female singular form, забыла is the neuter singular form, and забыли is the plural form, and it covers all genders. Now, it just so happens that забыть is the perfective form of the verb, and its imperfective counterpart is забывать, for your information. However, the past tense forms of забывать are quite predictable, and they are as follows. Забывал, забывала, забывала, and забывали. Understanding the difference between the perfective and the imperfective aspect of a verb is important. First of all, verbs are most commonly listed in their infinitive form using the imperfective aspect. For instance, посещать means to visit and is in the imperfective aspect with its perfective counterpart being посетить. The imperfective aspect denotes an action which is incomplete, ongoing, interrupted, or repeated. Whereas the perfective aspect denotes an action which will be or has been completed and that won't be interrupted or repeated. For instance, the sentence, I will write a letter every week, would require the imperfective aspect since the writing will occur repeatedly. However, I will write a letter this afternoon requires the perfective aspect because the sentence implies that the action will be completed. Moving on to present tense verbs, we will use ожидать, which means to expect, as our example. The present tense forms of ожидать include ожидаю in the first person singular, ожидаешь in the second person singular, ожидает in the third person singular, ожидаем in the first person plural, ожидаете in the second person plural, and ожидают in the third person plural. Interestingly, there is no indication of gender when using present tense verbs. Future tense verbs are said to be either simple or compound. Although the compound forms are actually simpler than the simple forms, despite the terminology used to refer to them. The compound future tense follows a rather simple formula. A form of the verb быть, which means to be, is followed by an infinitive form of a verb in its imperfective aspect. As for the simple future, it applies to the perfective aspect, and instead of using a form of быть, followed by an infinitive, there are actual conjugations to deal with. So, for исполнить, which means to use, we have the following forms to worry about. First person singular is исполню. Second person singular is исполнишь. Third person singular is исполнить. First person plural is исполним. Second person plural is исполните. And third person plural is исполнят. And now for a few sample sentences. Они забыли инструкции means they forgot the instructions. Мы ожидаем жаркую погоду means we expect hot weather. Я буду читать книгу means I will read the book. Он будет разбивать много бутылки means he will break many bottles. And ты исполнишь лестницу means you will use the ladder. The focus words covered in this lesson include забывать means to forget, ожидать means to expect, быть means to be, разбивать means to break, and исполнить means to use. And although there is much more to know about verbs, it is time for this lesson to come to a conclusion. Rusky Ed, signing out. Das Vidanya!